Well, g'day, folks. Welcome to another edition of Legends with Bevo, and today we're joined by Ricky Nixon. He's a larger-than-life character. He played 63 games of footy with the Blues, Saints and Hawks, and he was the number one player agent back in the day, managed the likes of Gary Ablett and Wayne Carey. So really looking forward to hearing from the great Ricky Nixon.
Welcome to Legends with Bevo. Thanks to the Holdy Hotel, Coopers and Anytime Fitness Glenelg.
The great Ricky Nixon, great to have you on Legends with Bevo, mate. How are you going over there in Melbourne? Obviously, it's a bit scary at the moment. The situation going very, very downhill fast. How are you going over there? Thinking of you guys.
Yeah, look, it's not easy. Just today, people may not have caught up with the news, and it's been a record amount of outbreaks overnight. So I think that'll mean tomorrow we go into stage 4 lockdown. And what that means, I really don't know. I'm not saying what it means legally, but what it's going to mean for people mentally. And, I've got a lot of mates struggling at the moment, male and female, and families. And it's not good. It's not good at all.
No, it's a terrible situation. And like I said, all the jokes aside, obviously in South Australia, we are really thinking of you guys. There's been that banter about, don't come to Melbourne, that sort of thing. But yeah, it's a horrible situation, and let's hope that things get better sooner rather than later. How you been spending the situation the last few months yourself, mate?
Oh, look, it's been a bit of a roller coaster ride for me. I mean, people who know me well know I started a mobile health business in October. They think I'm a bit of a guru. Coronavirus started in November last year, but I don't want people to take that the wrong way. But so, yeah, the mobile business was basically going out to businesses doing health checks, particularly mental health checks, which are big these days. And skin checks, which I must admit I didn't see coming, very popular. And that got us to March when things were flying. And, of course, there was a shutdown then of businesses, which meant there wasn't anyone to do health checks on apart from probably the construction industry. And we'd been over in Adelaide having some very, very fruitful discussions with some of the big construction companies over there. And I was quite excited about expanding into South Australia in April. Well, that's now on hold now. And the last couple of months have been taken up with flu vaccinations. And we're about to go back into skin checks next week.
And obviously, you touched at the start, the mental health situation, mate. You've gone through your own battles, which we'll get to in a moment. But what sort of advice do you have for people out there? You mentioned that you've got friends, male and female, that are going through a tough time. What sort of advice do you have for those people?
Yeah, look, I'm just, I guess, talking to them about what's worked for me. It doesn't mean it's going to work for you or anybody watching or listening to this, but what I focus on is I don't talk about the words mental health or suicide or anxiety or depression. I just talk about being happy and smiling and what works. And I know what works is going back through your teenage years and bringing things into your head that make you happy. And some of those things are probably pretty simple, like music, etc. But even going across to the supermarket and buying a paddle pop or a Sunny Boy or a glug or something that, I can see you smiling already, Bevo, is that's what it creates in your head. If you do things that you did in your teenage years and revisit them, it might just get you through this next tough period. And I'm actually putting together a list of that at the moment, which I'll probably make public over the weekend now that what's happened, and hopefully it helps a few people.
What a wonderful idea, mate. I love that. And obviously, you speak to the experts out there, and I spoke to Luke Hines the other week, who's a nutrition expert, and he's like, be careful with how much chocolate and stuff you have. But like you said, there's that balance. You've got to be able to enjoy life as well, and especially if you're going through a tough time. So I think that's great advice. And we'll get to your situation, mate, because, you've had a very interesting life. You played the 63 games of AFL, as I mentioned at the start, 3 different clubs, and then you were the number one player manager in Australia. But then you've had your own mental health battles as well. Talk to us through this and how you overcome those hurdles.
Oh, look, I think just to clarify is that when it comes to the mental health side of it, mine's pretty straightforward. It was an addiction, simple to that. And we've all got one. Doesn't matter whether it's legal, illegal, but we're addicted to something in our life, whether it's coffee, alcohol, gambling, drugs, it doesn't matter. And I had to fight that, and I've beaten that, and I've moved on and in a good, healthy state. I think a lot of people today who suffer from mental health issues, some are mainly genetical, and, that's just the luck of the draw. We can't all be blessed with where we were born or what time we were born or in what era we were born. I mean, imagine if the next 5 years are really, really tough in our lives for a kid, say, going through primary school. It's going to be very, very difficult. So it's, how you learn to deal with that. And I guess the biggest single thing I learned over the years is just learn about yourself. What makes yourself tick? Why are you actually hell-bent on getting 40 coffees a day or going gambling every day? Why is it that you do that? Once you understand that, you can manage it. And once you can manage it, then your life will get a lot better.
Yeah, wonderful advice. And, let's talk about your footy journey, because it's a really interesting one. You played at 3 different clubs, and you played in a tough era of footy, Ricky, and you played with and against some absolute legends. But, talk to us through the footy journey and how you became an AFL player.
Oh, look, I grew up in Bendigo in central Victoria with a little fat kid, Greg Williams, who reckons he was a better player than me. But one of the funny things was he got inducted in the Hall of Fame in Bendigo last year at Golden Square, and I was there. It was a packed house, 1,000 people, and the MC said, "Now, Greg, you got the flick from Carlton 4 times. You then wrote a handwritten letter to Tom Hafey at Geelong, who was a coach, who agreed to rookie you. You then went on to win 2 Brownlows and premierships and everything. What was the motivation behind that?" And he says, when your best mate, Ricky Nixon, gets a game ahead of you, that's the biggest motivation ever. And I must admit, I had to crack up laughing. The whole crowd turned around and looked at my reaction, but I thought it was pretty funny. So, I was lucky growing up with Greg, because every day was competition to beat each other. It didn't matter whether we were down in the local footy ground doing boomerangs from the boundary line or running up hills, which he wasn't any good at. But, he'd probably beat me for the hard ball, I suppose. So, once again, I'm reigniting the stuff in your head that makes you happy back in your teenage years. Lucky growing up with Greg. Both of us super competitive, and that's what's probably helped us both, not just in football, but in business as well. He's done well in business as well.
And obviously, I mentioned it before, you're #1 player manager in Australia back in the day, and you managed some absolute superstars. I guess talk to us through that and some of your favourite players that you managed.
Yeah, look, yesterday, Kevin Sheedy, of all people, who I highly regard as one of the greatest coaches of all time, he reckons he's the greatest, and I'm probably not going to disagree with him at the moment, but he actually rang me to talk about who was in my original Club 10. For those who don't know what Club 10 was, back in when I started player management in 94, the AFL, of all people, Ross Oakley, the CEO, and Jeff Brown, the legal advisor, sent me to America to meet with all the best sports over there. I saw this thing called the Quarterback Club, which was the 10 best quarterbacks in a group. And what no one had done in Australia was I suppose, group marketing. Everyone just marketed people individually. And I thought if we put this group together, because the VFL had just become the AFL around that time, or about 4 years before it. And I thought if we're going to expose ourselves or try and get sponsorship from a Telstra or a Coca-Cola or someone like that, you need to have Australia-wide representation, not just Victoria. So I put together Club 10, which was Ablett, Carey, Dunstall, Lockett, Wanganeen, Jakovic, Stuart Lowe, Gavin Brown, the Collingwood captain at the time, who was very low profile but an absolutely sensational player, Gary Lyon, Diesel Williams, and that was the original Club 10. And then after that, I added a few blokes who were not too bad, James Hurd, Mark Rasciuto, the Rui, you'll love me saying that, Ben Cousins, who could play a little bit, and Michael Voss, who could play a little bit. I added them later on.
And after you've sort of finished off the player management stuff, where have you sort of gone from there? Because obviously you've had your ups and downs, and you're doing great things with the flu back where you were with before COVID situation. But yeah, talk to us about the story from after the player management to now.
Yeah, look, there's been a few things that probably changed my life, and one of them's been cancer. Not only did I lose my mum to cancer at 57, that was 20 odd years ago, but what happened was a young girl who was 9 years old spoke to me at all places, at a restaurant, in a pub, a mate of mine owned, and told me she had brain cancer. And I was just absolutely, devastated. That this girl who had so much energy, she was high-fiving me and everything. And I said, look, I'm going to start a footy game and raise money to help kids with cancer and grant wishes to them. And it's just been, it's just been great. Everyone associated with it, we all work really hard. And what we do is, for example, I could have a family in Adelaide who's got a young kid who's got cancer and they barrack for Port Adelaide. So I'll ring Port Adelaide, I'll get the kid into the rooms, meet up with Vokey or someone like that, and, get a video from the captain, even like Scotty Pendlebury, Marcus Montempelli in the last month or so. They've been unbelievable. I've had some kids who weren't in great shape, and, they both sent me videos. I won't say exactly what was on them, but saying how, we're right behind you at the Western Bulldogs Football Club. And these kids have both gone into remission. And I think it's a lot to do with the positive nature of what I was talking about before. So I just see my job going forward is just to create this positive in people, and perhaps people who are suffering a bit, I suppose. and it could be something from cancer, etc. So that's what I've been doing. I run this game. This year we played it in Shepparton in country Victoria. I'm actually was looking at going to Adelaide next year, believe it or not. But I guess until we know the circumstances, what the game is it's people who have had cancer and recovered, and ex-AFL players. So the likes of Brendan Favola's played, Jakey King's very popular, Anthony Koutafidis, Warwick Kappa played, even Brian Mannix from the Uncanny X-Men. I think I saw the funniest kick I've ever seen in footy. I reckon it went 7 metres, and everyone just cracked up laughing. It's it's been great, the support I've had from comedians and musicians and that, and all of them get around these kids. It's just inspiring.
Well done, mate. That's such a wonderful thing you're doing, and to hear those sort of stories about putting a smile on those kids' faces. Not only makes me very proud of you, but obviously you must feel very proud as well to have been able to pull that off.
Yeah, I've just sort of been more taken back by everyone. I just feel that there's a team around all this now, and the support you get's amazing, even from the corporate world. I mean, look, it's fair to say every one of us has been affected by cancer. It could be your grandmother, your grandfather, your brother, your sister. It could be your best mate. It could be your best mate's kid. We're all affected by it. It's a terrible disease. And I know we're going through something else at the moment in the health area, but cancer's been with us forever, and it's probably going to be with us forever. So, we've got to do the best we can with it.
Yeah, well said. And obviously, life's so precious, and sorry to hear about your mum, mate. You just got to enjoy every day as it comes, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, let's go on to a more of a light-hearted note. I spoke to Warwick the Wiz Kappa a couple of months ago, and what a character he is.
Bad luck.
And how's that? How did you and Wiz get to know each other, and talk to us through your friendship with him?
Well, it's an old saying, but chalk and cheese just go together, don't they? So I guess I've spent all my life listening to every footballer's problems and this and that and everything else. And then after they're finished talking, I usually give my suggestion on how they can get back in the team or play better or get a better life or whatever else. And with Warwick, though, the only problem is I've been listening to him for 4 years, haven't got one word in yet. So, but no, look, I love Warwick. I think the biggest problem with today's game is we don't have Warwick Kappas. We don't have these key forwards that are characters that the kids love, that kick 120 goals. People forget that Warwick Kappa, as funny and zany and everything else he is, he's only one of 16 players who've kicked 100 goals in the history of the game. And, he's an amazing player, probably took more marks of the year than anybody. But him and I do a show together. In fact, we're hopefully coming to Adelaide soon. A couple of footy clubs over there were keen to get us over there. We're just waiting until we get the tick to get over there. And, I love doing shows with him because it's a bit of fun and everyone enjoys it all.
Well, yeah, let's hope. I'm definitely keen for that. Hopefully that's sooner rather than later, mate. I'll be there with bells on to watch that.
Go on, sorry.
No, I was just going to say another character that you've also become close with over the years. A lot of people love or hate him, and that's Sammy Newman. Now, I used to love him on the footy show, and we spoke before about how life's changed, and he's not everyone's cup of tea, but I think he's just fantastic for the game, and it's such a sad situation that life's changed that the footy show is not on anymore on a Thursday night, because that used to be one of my favourite things, Ricky. Talk to us through your relationship with Sammy and the footy show, your thoughts on it.
Yeah, look, I guess with Sam, he speaks his mind, he has his opinion. I don't necessarily agree with some of the things he says, but that doesn't change my friendship with him because I'm not frightened to tell him what I think of him when I think he's wrong. And unfortunately, of late, Nicky Winmar's one of my best mates, played footy with him. We're very close. And, I actually felt very down about, I guess, what had happened. People can take sides, and I'm not going to give an opinion on what Sam said or what Nicky did or whatever. I'm just grateful that in the end they got together and mediated and have moved on. But in today's world, having an opinion is not a great thing to have, and especially in the current climate when people aren't feeling great. And, if you offend someone, and you can simply do that by saying you bagged for Collingwood today, and people who are listening right now will be offended by that. So it's not a great world to live in when it comes to things like social media. In fact, I've got off Twitter because I'm just sick of some of the opinions from people. It's just hating on people time and time and time again. So I just don't see any purpose on being on a social media outlet like that at the moment.
Yeah, well said. You're right, Sammy. Some of the things he says, you do think, well, wow, that's gone a bit too far. And, probably did overstep the line with Nicky Winmar. But to his credit, like you said, that just shows the sort of bloke he is, that he sort of met up with him and they've managed to resolve that. It's an interesting world we live in, isn't it? Because I mentioned before that you played in an era where footy was just so tough. And not that it's not tough now, but one thing that I really miss and you touched on it, Ricky, before, is, you know, your big key forwards. We've got Tom Papley at the moment on 13 goals after 6 games.
I know.
And
it's extraordinary.
People are turning off footy because it's become so defensive. What's your thoughts on it to make it more like the old game that we all love?
Well, it's funny. I spoke to Andrew Demetrio this morning, who's a good mate and ex-CEO of the AFL. And he said, what's your solution? And I said, I'm not going to change from what I've said for the last 10 years. And it's quite simple. Once this pressure situation and cramming of everything up and zoning off started, the only way to stop that is have 16 aside and create space and no kicking backwards. And then therefore you have to go forward and go forward quickly. If you watch Carlton, if Carlton didn't play the way they did on Sunday night, I doubt I'd be watching footy for the rest of the season. They excited me. They kicked 100 points. They looked great. Even the Western Bulldogs played pretty good footy. They played direct. They went through the middle. They didn't do this go around the back and go around the other side of the ground. So my big 2 main points, if you want to bring back key forwards and kicking goals and everything else, is reduce the number of players on the ground and no kicking backwards. And it's 2 pretty simple things to change, I think.
I actually agree with you. Yeah, kicking backwards, play on if it's in the,
play
in the
on,
defensive
basically,
50.
yeah.
I agree, because we saw the start of the Hawthorn game against the Pies, and they were just kicking backwards, sideways, and stuff like that, and it was just horrible to watch. And obviously the Pies ended up winning that one, and Clarkson copped a lot of criticism. And, you know, it's a bit unfair on a bloke that's won 5 premierships. So,
well, also too, Clarko to me, you know, seems to get a lot of blame for this. I don't agree. When they won 3 flags, people don't realise they had 11 left footers in their team. Now, what that means is left footers kick the ball, and it's something like a split second quicker to land on your teammate's chest than it is with a right footer for some reason. And that was one of the reasons they moved the ball quickly, Hawthorn. That's why they won the flags. But then now they've reverted to this pressure game. It just doesn't stack up. And look, I was absolutely wrapped with Damien Hardwick, the way he came out and honestly said that he thought the game against Sydney was absolute crap. And it was. It was the worst game I've seen for ages. And I just went, if this is going to continue, I really don't know what the future of football is going to be.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, to put up one excuse for that game, I guess the weather was pretty horrendous in that second half. So, but yeah, you're right. Let's hope there's not many of those for the rest of the season. But going on to the season, another one who's, you know, over the years copped a lot of criticism, and that's been Gill Mclaughlin. He's made some interesting decisions. But I don't know about you, Ricky, but I think he's done a wonderful job. And also Travis Auld, considering the circumstances that we've had this year, and now obviously all these teams going to Queensland. What's your take on the whole situation?
Yeah, 100%. I think that, to me, Gill's just been put out there and not a lot of credit's been given to some people behind the scenes. Travis Ald's very good. Andrew Dillon, who's been there for a long time, is very good. I just think it's about time the commission stood up and started to actually show people a bit of leadership. I mean, people wouldn't even know we're on the AFL commission now. Maybe it's time for the AFL to bring back a Mike Fitzpatrick, Graham Samuel, who created the commission in the first one. Some advisors who have got a lot of experience, particularly in financial area, and been very successful, because the next probably 2 to 3 years financially could be doom or gloom for the AFL, or they could get back on their feet. And also that if they get back on their feet properly, that means that local footy gets back on their feet properly, because that's where the glaring error is going to be. Local footy, I don't care which state it is, South Australia, Western Australia, it's going to be very, very difficult the next 12 months.
Yeah, absolutely spot on, because without the local footy, the state footy, there is no AFL, because that's where all the young guns come from. And
100%, yep.
I've been involved in the SANFL the last couple of years, unfortunately not this year because the radio station I was doing it with no longer involved. But, mate, I love the SANFL footy. It's just so, you know, the players are hard at it. It's high scoring. It's great. And, to see that go downhill would just be an absolute disaster.
Yeah, I agree. And look, women's football, and, you know, people can be critical of it at AFL level, but let's just give it a bit of time. But the women's football, girls' football out in the country areas, the local footy, it's booming. And, you know, to have it sort of hit this hurdle, you know, I just hope doesn't impact to the degree that girls walk away from the game, because, you know, as I said, the participation level at local level is absolutely outstanding at the moment. Yeah,
it's quite phenomenal, that's for sure. Speaking of phenomenal, there's another character that you do a bit of stuff with as well, Ricky, one of my favourites, and that's Swanee. Talk to us through your podcast and how this all came about.
Sorry, who was Swanee, did you say? Sorry, I just cut out a little bit there. Yeah, Swanee. Look, I love Swanee. Bit like Warwick Capper, I guess Swanee and I wouldn't say we're chalk and cheese, but We get on really well. And I'm actually very, very disappointed that back in February, Swanee and I did about 5 shows in 2 weeks, and it really took off. And we had about, I reckon, at least 30 to 50 booked for the footy season. Of course, they're all cancelled now. And even got clubs still ringing me, Ricky, can we just do like a Zoom thing or something with the players or whatever? But I don't know, part of me says that will it really work, that sort of thing? It's okay to do individual ones like this, but to try and have 100 people on a Zoom call, I think might be a bit difficult. But yeah, Swanee's a great bloke and loves footy. And look, he sells out every crowd everywhere we go. I'm not sure I'm contributing to the sellout as much as he is, but we love getting out and doing shows. And Swanee's been speaking to me every few weeks about where's it all at and what's going to happen. And I can't give him an answer, unfortunately. But he's probably, he is the most popular person on that sort of sportsman's night circuit at the moment.
Yeah, I've actually never seen him live before, and he's another one on the bucket list I'd love to see. And like you mentioned, hopefully when things go back to normal, we can get yourself, Wiz, Swanee, and a few others over to Adelaide. Hopefully, obviously this year's probably not going to happen, but next year, fingers crossed. Yeah,
what works well is what I call a show. You've got to have someone to MC it, I suppose, which is probably me. And you get a draw card like Kappa, or you get Swanee. And I know the questions to lead them into some very interesting answers, and some of them have been absolutely hilarious. That's for sure. But anyway, hopefully we get to Adelaide, or not even just Adelaide, but the all around South Australia in the next 12 months.
Yeah, exactly, like the regional parts of the South Australia as well, like you said. Let's go back to your own career, Ricky. You've played with and against some absolute superstars. Talk to us through some of your toughest opponents and why over the years.
Yeah, I often get asked about toughest opponents, but it's sort of more, I guess, because I was lucky. I played through an era when you talk about playing with Tony Lockett. You talk about playing with sorry, I just got a call on my phone then, just when you don't need, the whole screen disappeared. You play with Tony Lockett, Nicky Winmar, Danny Frawley, those blokes. And then, I should start with Carlton. I mean, the names there, Jeff Southey, Trevor Keogh, Rod Ashman, Wayne Johnson, Mark McClure, Greg Weavers wasn't there at that time. The list goes on and on. Alex Marcoux, great mate of mine, 3-time premiership player. And then you go to Hawthorn, where Dermot Brett, Jason Dunstall, Gary Ayres, John Platten, the list goes on. And you think, I say to people today, name me 10 genuine superstars in the competition. I played with 10 in my team, just about. They were just absolute stars and, absolute characters. And to be honest, I didn't take that much notice of the opposition, I suppose. I'm not dodging the question, but if I said probably the one that stands out the most would be Richard Osborne at Fitzroy, who him and I got into a good old punch on one day, and it went to the tribunal. I'll never forget this. And the goal umpire who reported us stood up and said, and now this was 1 week before the finals, and Fitzroy had made the finals in first time in 30 years or something. And the goal umpire stopped and said, I've umpired 400 games of football. I've never seen a more vicious, violent, aggressive punch on between two players. There was at least 40 punches thrown. I've gone, oh my God, I'm going to get life here. Anyway, the tribunal went out to this room, came back and said, okay, we've decided to give you a severe reprimand, both of you. Now, nobody gets it. It was only to keep Richard playing the following week. And but I think I was the last person to ever get a severe reprimand in football. I don't think it exists anymore. But Richard Osborne was one of the great players I played on. And there's a lot over the years, that's for sure.
And what's your relationship like now? Because one thing I love about footy is sometimes how you belt each other on the field, but you've still got that sort of good relationship. Do you and Ozzy still get along?
Oh, yeah. In fact, we just spoke probably a couple of weeks ago, to be honest, via LinkedIn. We were just joking. Someone had posted a famous picture of us both throwing a punch at each other, and we joked about how it was so serious at the time, but not now. I think that's a great thing about playing in the 80s and 90s, and that is the blokes that you played on that you might have got a bit I use the word violent, aggressive with. You can be great mates and have a beer with them now. That probably doesn't happen as much from players in the last 10, 15 years.
You're right. That's a wonderful thing. And let's talk about that era, because it was tough as nails. And, I just turned 40 this year, so I grew up in the era of the 80s and 90s, which I was very blessed to see all these absolute superstar full forwards, though. But what an era they to play in. And it must have been quite, I guess frightening at times to be in such a brutal era of footy, Ricky.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I remember one day Tony Lockett and I were in the gym on a Thursday night, and he said, who are we playing this week, chicken? I said, you don't know who we're playing? He goes, no. I said, mate, we're playing Footscray. He goes, oh, who's that bloke who played on me last time? He was trying to be a real prick, And I said, oh, that was Rick Kennedy. He said, I'm going to kill him. I said, oh, whatever. We get to the game on Saturday. I'll never forget this. He's knocked him over, got him in a headlock, and he was squeezing him. I looked at him, and Rick Kennedy's face went blue. I've gone, let him go, Plugger, let him go. He goes, no, I'm going to kill him. I said, you can't kill him. And all in brawl started everything. And it was a very famous incident. You can YouTube it, anyone watching now. And I'll never forget, I've never seen anyone's face go blue in my life, but he was choking him to death. And it was one of the funniest moments in footy, that's for sure.
Oh, I love it. And going forward this year, mate, where do you think the AFL Grand Final is going to be? And I know it's a hard call at this early stage, but who do you think is going to be the Grand Final with two teams?
Oh, well, the first part of it, where will it be played? I think that's going to be one of three venues, I'd say, at the moment. It's got to be, Queensland in front, probably in front, noses in front of Western Australia, probably third in the list is probably Sydney. But I'd say, given the outbreaks of coronavirus there in the last 48 hours, it has to be Queensland. But at the moment, things can change very quickly. This outbreak, you can go from having 5 people with it who give it to 50 each. Well, that goes up to 500 people sort of pretty quickly. So I think the AFL knows that. They know that there's no point saying it's going to be played here or there until they actually know. And God forbid, let's hope we even get to the grand final. Who's going to play in it? Well, I was pretty confident that GWS would bounce on this year after last year and finally take out a premiership with the talent they have. But they haven't played that well this year. And, the clubs that have caught my eye a little bit might surprise some people. But, I think Essendon have got some capability there. I mean, if they got Joe Danaher back, it'd certainly make a big difference. They're very good at going through the midfield with some leg speed off half-back with Sard and those sort of players. Certainly Port Adelaide's been brilliant. I'd have to say they're the flag favourites at the moment. Brisbane, well, they lost last week and, I think they do have the ability to get to the grand final. As far as Collingwood goes, and Richmond, no chance. Collingwood, I think they're a chance to get there, but they'd have to find some leg speed pretty quick, particularly if the games are going to be played in the Queensland weather, which is going to be usually dry and the ground's pretty swift, so that'll make a difference for sure. But at the moment, I think Port Adelaide got their nose in front.
I like it, mate. That's a very popular decision, mate. Well done. You can come on the show.
I'm not silly. I'm on a podcast in Adelaide. I'm not going to predict the Sydney Swans, am I?
No, that's it. And you're right, though. All jokes aside, let's just hope, fingers crossed, that we can get to the end of the season and wherever it might be, as long as we have a grand final, it'd just be great. So,
yeah, look, I think at the end of the day, whilst watching some games are putrid and everyone says, and I said, you've got to show a little bit of positivity. And the positivity is, at the moment, particularly in Victoria, people are going to be in lockdown for a long time. And if we can have footy on TV, at least it gives some people a bit of satisfaction to watch their team. Let's hope they just can play some footy that stimulates people and gets them happy.
Yeah, it's well said. And before I let you go, mates, I always like asking this question from my guests at the end of the show. 3 famous people that you'd love to have dinner with, male or female, who would they be, Ricky?
Well, Bevo would be number 1. Number 2, famous people I'd like to have. This might surprise some people. I've always thought that Eminem was just a serious superstar. A bloke to create a new form of music that took over the world, to me, is an entrepreneur that I just think I would just love to meet him. Who else would I like to meet? I reckon I'd like to meet Donald Trump just to see if Sam Newman's right. Who else would I like to meet? Maybe I would have liked to have met also Michael Jackson, which might be a strange answer back in the day, only because of how competent he was. Forget the side off the field, if you like, but just I love geniuses who are good at what they're really good at, I suppose. And someone even like Roger Federer in tennis, those sort of people. I actually was lucky enough to meet Michael Jordan, and I'll never forget that. And he was the inspiration, I suppose, behind me coming back to Australia. And I said, I've got to find the Michael Jordan of Australia. And the next minute, this kid Wayne Carey walked into my office, and that changed things forever.
Wow, Michael Jordan, mate, that is one of the best. And I'm with you. Like, to have dinner with him, even to meet him, would just be amazing. So you're a lucky man, Ricky. A lot of people are very envious on that one, I reckon.
Oh, absolutely. Now, I'll leave you with a good story about my most famous or equally famous client, Gary Ablett. I used to have an office with a a phone with a cord in those days, a private line for the players. And one day it rang and I said, hello. And this voice said, hey, Ricky, it's Gary Ablett. I've gone, yeah, whatever. And hung up. I didn't manage him at the time. Rang again. He goes, Ricky, it's really Gary Ablett. I've gone, oh, what do you want? He goes, I heard you managed Wayne Carey. You made him $100,000 last year. If you can make me $100,000, I'll sign with you for 10 years. I said, Gary, I'll make you $100,000 in 3 weeks. He goes, all right, I'll sign with you now. I said, done. I've gone, I hung up the phone. I've gone, oh, my God, how am I going to do this? Swear it's true. 10 minutes later, my phone rang and this guy goes, Ricky, it's Phil from Peter the Lombard Paper People. Do you manage Gary Ablett? I said, yeah, I've been managing him forever. He goes, oh, good. He goes, I want to do a life-size cardboard cutout of him. He said, would 50 grand be all right? I said, it's Gary Ablett. He goes, what about 100? I said, done. Hung up the phone. I rang Gary. He goes, you're an absolute superstar. I said, thanks, mate. You've got to be at the photographer studio in North Melbourne at 11 o'clock Sunday morning. He goes, done. He got there at 3 o'clock. He turned up with Gary Jr. and Nathan, who were 12 and 11 at the time. And Gary was in the toilets combing his one strand of hair for 3 hours. And the two boys were out there mucking around. They knocked over a light stand. The photographers come running out. Oh, no, these bloody kids. Gary's come running out. He's gone over to his computer, the photographer. He's printed off a photo of Gary taking mark of the century. And he said, there you go, you two kids, now pee off. And the two kids swung around. Now, if you think about, have you ever done this? What do you reckon the two kids did? They turned around to Gary Senior and said, Dad, can you sign it for us? Now, have you ever asked your dad for an autograph? What do you reckon Gary said? He said, no, piss off. I said, Gary, it's your own kids. He said, I'm not signing it, Rick. I said, Gary, the photographer goes, okay, that's it, Mr. Agent Hotshot. I'm taking these two kids out of the room. If you don't fix this in the next 3 minutes, the whole $100,000's off the table. I've gone, oh, no, my new BMW's off the table. So he takes them out of the room. I said, Gary, sign it for your own kids. He said, I'm not signing it, Rick. I said, please, Gary. He said, Rick, I've been up to the school 3 times this week to see the principal. They've been bringing home footy cards. I've been signing them. They've been selling them for $70. I said, anyway, you're going to love this next bit. I saw Gary Jr. 10 years later and he says, hey, Chicken, I need to speak to you. I said, what's up, Gaz? He goes, mate, I heard you tell this story all the time at footy clubs. It's not true. I said, it's not true. He goes, no, you shouldn't be saying that. I said, oh, sorry, mate. So you weren't selling cards with your dad for $70? He said, no, we weren't. We're getting 150.
Yes.
I saw Gary Senior. We played golf a couple of weeks ago, and Gary was in great state, and I was telling him the story again. He goes, "Oh yeah, he goes, it was actually funny. It was actually true. So it's a good story."
Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, what a story, mate! Thanks for sharing. That's wonderful. You don't really hear enough stories about that these days. So,
no, you don't.
In this world we live in, like you said before, people just get way too offended, and you can't have a laugh anymore.
No, you can't these days, and I hope it can change back around. But there's definitely no place for racism and things like that when you're trying to be funny. But you can still have a laugh, and usually that's at the expense of your mates and that, and they shouldn't take it so offensively when we're just having a joke about how red your face looks at the moment, like mine. Yeah. When yours is pure white, Bevo.
Yeah, exactly. And you just got to have a laugh. And obviously, I cop crap out like having a receding hairline and what have you, mate. But you just take it like a man and you give it back to your mates, and that's what it's all about. And we all need a laugh at the moment, and I certainly have one today chatting to you, mate. So thanks so much, Ricky Nixon, for joining us on Legends of Bevo.
No worries, Bevo, and all the best, mate. Toot, toot.
You too, mate. Keep up the great work. And stay safe over there in Melbourne, most importantly, as well.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks a lot.